Those of you that know me know that I'm a conservative evangelical Christian. However, that's not the perspective that I'm going to argue my paper today. The title of my paper is not the Christian case for drugs, it's the moral case for drugs. In the 15 or so years that I've been writing as a conservative Christian libertarian, and certainly not before that, I had never, until last October for Mises Daily, written anything exclusively about the subject of drugs. My hesitation in doing so was not because I only recently came to the conclusion that the war on drugs was a monstrous evil. To the contrary, I can remember questioning the whole idea of drug prohibition and victimless crimes when I was just, for lack of a better term, a libertarian-leaning conservative. My hesitation in writing anything negative about the subject of drug prohibition is because of the pathetically predictable negative reaction I knew I would receive outside of libertarian circles, and especially the hysterical reaction I knew I would receive from some of my Christian brethren. I would like to begin by making two statements. Two statements that might not seem radical to anyone attending a conference at the Mises Institute, but two statements that would get me censured or ridiculed in some political or religious circles. Statement number one. It is neither the job of government nor the business of any individual to prohibit, regulate, restrict, or otherwise control what a man desires to eat, drink, smoke, inject, absorb, snort, sniff, inhale, swallow, or otherwise ingest into his body. Statement number two. There is no ethical precept in any religion or moral code that should lead anyone to believe that it is the job of government or the business of any individual to prohibit, regulate, restrict, or otherwise control what a man desires to eat, drink, smoke, inject, absorb, snort, sniff, inhale, swallow, or otherwise ingest into his body. I'm not saying that I think it is acceptable for anyone to take drugs for any reason other than for medicinal or therapeutic purposes. I consider any other use to be a vice. But as the 19th century political philosopher Lysander Spooner reminded us, vices are not crimes. I am not saying that I approve of school bus drivers smoking a joint while they drive their buses, or mechanics getting buzzed while they repair your car, or people walking around stoned in public. Why is it that drug prohibitionists think that all Americans would be on a perpetual high if drugs were legalized? And why is it that they accuse freedom lovers of desiring or being indifferent to such a society? I am not saying that individuals and organizations should not be concerned about drug abuse. Most of the negative externalities that result from people taking drugs are due to the government's war on drugs. In the absence of drug prohibition, drug abuse could be handled the same way as alcohol abuse. By families, friends, churches, rescue missions, Alcoholics Anonymous type programs, physicians, psychologists, and treatment centers. All I am saying is that I want the government out of my body. I want the state out of my home, my car, my job, my boat, my church, my family, my club, my doctor's office, my insurance company, my bedroom, and my life. All I'm saying is that it should be none of anyone's business, as far as the law is concerned, if someone wants to get drunk, high, or stoned in a hotel bar, at a social event, or in his own home. All I'm saying is that it is unjust to lock someone up in a cage for smoking a plant. All I'm saying is that I want the government to take its hands off not only my drugs, but my bong, my crack pipe, and my rolling papers. Now, I don't own any drug paraphernalia and would buy neither drugs nor drug paraphernalia even if they were legal, but just the same. I want the government to keep its hands off my property, and your property, and your property, and your property. In the end, it all comes down to property and freedom. I have heard it said by some libertarians that deep down inside of every man, there beats the heart of a libertarian. I disagree. I think rather, and not just on this issue, that there beats the heart of a statist, an authoritarian, and a busybody who wants to remake society in his own image and compel others to live in ways that he approves of. I reject federal, state, and local drug prohibition of any kind. I'm against drug criminalization, drug regulation, drug restrictions, drug licensing, drug taxing, drug oversight, drug testing, and drugs limited to just medical use. Believers in a free society should challenge all laws on drug trafficking, drug manufacturing, drug sales, and drug use. They should object to the 750,000 arrests of Americans every year for marijuana possession. They should protest the incarceration of tens of thousands of Americans for drug-related offenses. I reject the government's war on drugs, just as I reject the government's war on poverty, war on cancer, war on terrorism, and war on liquids on airline flights. I say these things as someone who doesn't use illegal drugs, wouldn't use illicit drugs if they were legalized, and would prefer that no one else use them either. And to those who say I'm being too extreme, I would remind you that
extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice.
I guess I could just say that I oppose root and branch every facet of the government's war on drugs. But I want to not only make myself perfectly clear, but also to get you to realize just how broad in scope is the state's war on personal freedom. I'm choosing my words carefully and deliberately. Liberty and freedom. Individual liberty and personal freedom. These ideals, along with the sanctity of private property, are fundamental in combating the drug war. The moral case for drugs is simply the case for freedom. Freedom to use one's property as one sees fit. Freedom to enjoy the fruits of one's labor in whatever way one deems appropriate. Freedom to use one's body in the manner of one's choosing. Freedom to follow one's own moral code. Freedom from being taxed to fund government tyranny. Freedom from government intrusion into one's personal life. And freedom to be left alone. It is those of us who advocate the liberty to take drugs and a free market in drugs that are taking the high moral ground. How can anyone with any sense of morality support seizing someone's property, destroying his family, and locking him up in a cage to be raped and humiliated for smoking a plant the government doesn't approve of? What kind of a moral code contains stipulations like this? The case for drugs is a moral case because the war on drugs is a war on natural, civil, personal, and constitutional rights. Two wrongs don't make a right. It is not right to act immoral to prevent someone from doing something immoral. In presenting the moral case for drugs, I am not distinguishing between legal and illegal drugs, or between drugs for medical use and drugs for recreational use. Drugs in and of themselves are not necessarily bad. It depends on how and why they are used. The question is, who is going to determine those things? Will it be the individual in consultation with his family, friends, church, and physician? Or will it be the state in consultation with its legislators, regulators, agents, and bureaucrats? In a free society, it is the individual. In an authoritarian society, it is the state.